All right, so we just talked about documentation, and I just went on and on and on with a rant about documentation and data integrity and how these are common violations and what can we do in-house to make sure that all of these things are upheld according to GMP standards, rules, and regulations. So what this means is that there are going to be a certain set of rules that we need to follow when we fill out documents. And again, this applies to the laboratory side of the house. It applies to the manufacturing side of the house. No matter what you're doing within the company, a document, if the document has to be filled out, you are going to be filling it out in a certain way. And here's step number one. So you are going to date and you are going to time, of course, the entries that you are making, whether these are electronic documents or whether these are old-fashioned pencil, not pencil, but pen and paper documents that you are using. So date and time, very important. You cannot leave those out. Again, it has to be contemporaneous. Number two, we are going to be using ink, and it's got to be permanent ink. Some people, if you're real fancy, will call it indelible. We need to use indelible ink. Oh, look at me and how smart that I sound. It's permanent. So do not use pencil. Nothing can be erased, and that also means you cannot use pens that are erasable, because those are not indelible inks. So you got to use ink to fill out the forms if you are writing them by hand. Absolutely no pencils should be found in the documentation areas at all. Keep the pencils away. Number three, write legibly. So we've already talked about that. That was part of Alcoa. Tracy, I know Alcoa. I know the L. The L means legible. Absolutely, it does. So you got to make sure that you can write, that people can read it. So be neat. Take your time with it, unlike me and my scribbles. Number four, entries have to be complete. So that way other people later on down the road can understand what happens, who did what, and all of the other relevant information that needs to come along with it. So dates, times, names, individual steps. You got to be specific, folks. You can't shorthand it. You can't skip over steps. These things have to be the way that they are, and they've got, again, to be complete. Number five, data should be correct and data should be precise. What this means is that everything has got to be legit with hopefully some backup. So if I am using balances, receipt printers are going to help me make sure that the data is correct and that the data is precise. If I'm doing reports, those reports better match the data that I'm writing into the documents or that I'm keying into the electronic versions of what I am doing. Very, very important. Number six, something else that needs to happen with documentation is that signatures are going to be needed. Signatures are like your little contract with the devil, demon, or the angel, if you're on that side, that you are making a contract with. I have signed it, and that signature is stating that the document is complete. I am signing that these are legit. I am signing that what I wrote down in here is what it's supposed to be. And that way, if there's any questions or any problems, I am responsible for what is in that document. You better not sign it if you don't feel good. You better not sign it if you are making up that data. Absolutely not, because that document can be used in the court system, and you're now pulled in to the court, ask a barrage of questions from lawyers that are trying to put you into pen. So you want to kind of make sure you do not sign off on things if you know they are not truthful. So every signature also requires, though, a date. If it does not have a date, it is not complete. A date is going to be very important. Sometimes if these are electronic versions of signatures, the electronic versions can auto-date it, and very often it will, just to make sure it is dated on that date at that time in a contemporaneous fashion. But if these are kind of old school and it's going to require a little bit of a pen, if you forget to date it, that is not complete. So your your signature means nothing unless you date it afterward. It's always going to be understood to be that way. Number 7, you want to use the date and the time format that is appropriate for your company. And it could be anything, right? So for instance, the date format could be you write out the entire word. So for instance, October the 5th of 2021. Okay, well, maybe that's the way your company wants you to write it down, and you are forced to write it down that way. You write down the entire word. You do not use abbreviations. You do not use numbers to represent 10 for October. That is not what happens. That is not company approved. So if that's the way the company operates, that's what you're going to have to follow. Some companies, though, could be like, yeah, I think we're okay. We'll do 10/5/21 here. Absolutely, not a problem. And then other ones are like, no, we don't like that. We're going to do 10 and 05 because we want our dates to have 2 digits. And then we want the full year of 2021. If that's what they do, then that's what you got to do. Some people are going to be like, no, we're going to start with the date first. So we're going to do 05, and then we'll do October, OCT, capital letters, and then full year 2021. Whatever that format is at that facility, that's what you follow. That's what you're going to have to do. So it's just the way it is, folks. So I hope that I'm not working for a place that does this, right? I don't want to write out the word Decembers and Novembers and Septembers and Octobers and August over and over and over and over. Februaries, could you imagine? Forget it. I'll never spell that correctly. The time is the same way. As far as the time goes, then the time is going to be recorded in the approved fashion with the company. But I will say that the times, most companies, not all, but most companies are using the 24-hour clock, aka military time. So that means in the mornings, 8 o'clock, and then 11 o'clock, and then 12 o'clock. Okay, well, then after that, you go at 1 o'clock. That's normal. That's what people write down. No. 24-hour clocks would be things like 13 o'clock, 17 o'clock, 20 o'clock, all the way up to midnight at 24 o'clock. So most companies will do the military time or the 24-hour clock at their facility. So you got to get used to that. It seems that there's a little bit of a learning curve there to interpret what military time is all about and what these values actually mean, because you're just not really accustomed to interpreting time in that way. The reason they do that is because they don't want AM and PM confusion. That's tricky. Military time, it doesn't matter AM or PM. Military time tells us exactly if it's in the morning or if it's in the evening, no questions asked. And that's a safer route to go with as far as time is concerned. Right? Some of the other things that we need to think about when we fill out documentation is that I should never, ever, 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 ever use ditto marks. No, you do not use that. So for instance, if I write a sentence and I'm like, oh, well, this is what I did and this is what happened, and then in the next step, I do the same thing, I do not just do ditto. Absolutely not. Those are not allowed. You have to indicate that a entry is going to be there. You have to clearly state that you did it a second time, and dittos are not allowed because there are chances that those steps did not happen in the same exact way with the same exact results. So do not use them. Get that out of your habit. If you do have a habit of doing that, it is not allowed. Next up are errors. If I do make an error, like pencil, no pencil. If I make it with pen and paper, then those errors, they can be fixed. I can make mistakes. That's okay. But they're got to be fixed in a certain way. So let's say that I'm writing something, right? And I go back and I go, oh no, that's not what I did. I didn't mean to do that. That was a mistake. Or I didn't mean to write down that number. Or I didn't mean to write down, that kind of value, whatever the kind of thing that's going on, or that date or that time or whatever. You need to take a strike through from whatever you wrote. Just one. That is it. Remember, pens have to be used. Pens cannot be erased. They have to be permanent. But you have to let an auditor or a reviewer know what was there when you made that entry that was incorrect. So that entry that's wrong, someone should still be able to read it. And that one strike through is very commonly done. Once I do the strike through, then I'm going to come over to the side and I'm going to initial it. And then I'm going to date it if that's the thing. Very often, I'm going to also have to write down a statement of why. Why did I do that? They have to know, right? You made a correction. They probably will not know why that correction was needed. You're going to have to explain to a reviewer or an auditor why that was incorrect. I wrote down the wrong numbers. That was not performed. I misspelled. I flipped the digits. A reasoning has to go in. So you cannot overwrite data, and when you correct it, it still has to be legible. And overwriting data is something like, okay, well, there's a C. Oh, no, I didn't mean for it to be a C. I really meant for it to be a D instead. No. Can't do it. Okay, I write down a number, 3. Oh no, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean a 3. What I really meant was an 8. No! Data integrity! No! You got to cross it out. Strike through it, initial it, date it, and explain why that was a mistake that has to be done. Has to be done. By no means, for goodness gracious, by no means you should be using correction fluid, aka whiteout. Do not use correction fluid. That is not appropriate. It's not allowed. That shouldn't even be found in the facility. If you find correction fluid, you treat it like it's the heaviest radioactive substance ever, and you get rid of it as fast as you can. Whiteout is not allowed. Erasers are the same way. You better not have erasers in sight. If you find one that's another fallout radioactive device, you trash it before you turn into the ghoul. Don't do it. You mark through, you initial, you date, and you explain why that mistake is incorrect. Next up, other things that we want to think about as we complete documentation practices. Your next one is backdate. Oh, no. We're not going to backdate. Absolutely not. Forms are filled out. Forms are C for Alcoa, contemporaneous. Okay, they've got to be live. They got to be in real time. You should not be backdating things. Those dates should have happened when you signed off, when you initialed it, and so forth. There's got to be measures in place to prevent that from happening. Number 2, if you need a second set of eyes, aka initials, folks, they have to witness it. So in the lab or in the manufacturing line, as I'm completing a form, as I'm writing down data, and it says, please get a second reviewer's initials. Do not get their initials unless they actually saw it happen. That is a lie. It is initialing to confirm that that is what took place. If they were not there with you, if they did not see it happen, if they did not see the readout, if they did not see that digital kind of number that was on the screen, they should not be initialing. They can't. They didn't witness it. What good is that? You might as well make up initials. Things, self-checks, have to be in place. That's going to be one of them. Very important. Next, 3. Blank space, baby. Oh, Taylor Swift. All right. Avoid leaving blank fields. Nothing should ever be left blank. So, for instance, if you have a blah, 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 and then they say, write in your thing. If you did not actually do that, if that's not needed, if that's not longer required, whatever the case might be, you are just going to put in a not applicable. You do not leave it blank. You do not write a little dash. You put in a there for that reason. It's best practice to write those abbreviations. In a, and, of course, in/a, that also works. Depends on the company and how they want you to do it. Not a big deal. Number 4, we're going to revisit mistakes here a little bit. When mistakes are made, we now know what we need to do. We need to cross it out with one line. We need to initial, we need to date and stamp it, and we need to write a reason. Okay, all of that is very important. And here are some examples of maybe what you would see and what maybe is approved or acceptable. So up here is a handwritten 5:06 p.m. TWM, which are the initials of the person, and the date is 25 September 2018. This is the original, what was on the form in the very beginning, and someone looks at this and says, oh no, shoot. And the reason is because they're thinking, oh, I wrote down 5:06. 5:06 is not the approved time that they want me to log it. So I need to change that. So what happens is that you will put a strike through that entry all the way. That way people can still see what was there. People know that that's a mistake. And then you're going to go in and you're going to write in the correction. And that correction, instead of 5:06, you add 12 onto 5, and that gives you 17. So 17:06 is how you need to log the time here. So you've made a correction. The time is in the acceptable format now. And then they want you to write why. Because again, they don't know. They're not in your little bitty brain to figure out what was going on at that time and that date and why you had to do that. So you're letting someone know, a reviewer or an auditor, to say incorrect time format. That's why. That's why I had to do it. And then after you fix it, and after you write your statement on why you fixed it, then guess what? You are going to sign it, initial it, really. You're going to initial it and date it once more. Notice what happened here. This entry was on the 25th. You recognized that it was a mistake, and that mistake you recognized was the day after. Before you got further into the chain, you were reviewing your documents. That's a good thing. You review them. Oh, shoot, that's a mistake. That's not the way they want me to do it. So therefore, I'm going to mark that out. They can still see when that original timestamp was taken. It was taken on this date at this time. It's still there. But I found that mistake and I corrected that mistake a little bit later. It could also be in real time, absolutely. If you know that that was a mistake when you did it, sure, go do it. Cross it out, initial it, date it, write why. You still got to do it. But certain things can be done after the review process begins to happen, especially simple little mistakes like this. Just appropriate formatting, that's not a big deal. But as you can imagine, the thing here is that if we do a lot of mistakes, oh my goodness, over and over and over and over, I'm going to have to do this. Yeah, so you better not be making any. You better take your time. You better make sure you do what you say that you're going to do. You got to make sure that things are legitimate. And you better do it the first time around. It saves you a lot of trouble a little later on. But some companies do allow footnotes. And footnotes are really for things that are very common. Common mistakes that people do all the time. So, for instance, like an SE can be a spelling error. Let's say that you reviewed a document and you're like, I did not spell that word the appropriate way, and I want this document to be legitimate and I want it to look professional. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to rewrite that word so that way I don't look like an idiot. So if you cross it out, that's great. You write in the correct spelling, and instead of writing, well, I misspelled the word each and every single time, you could be using a system of footnotes, and the company will determine what is appropriate for them. And they will give you, like, use a 1 every time a spelling error happens. Use a 2 when you write down the wrong number. Whatever the case that is, it saves you a little bit of trouble and it saves you a little bit of writing in the end. So for footnotes, companies have their own method if they are allowable. Some do not allow it. But if they do allow it, they will have their own method. You will follow that method that they provide you. You're going to initial and date the footnote as well as the correction. So that is something that you're going to have to still do. Like, you're still going to have to mark out the wrong thing. You're still going to initial it. You're still going to date it. When you write in what would have been your description of kind of what happened, but instead you write a footnote in, you're going to still initial and time and date that footnote as well, because that is in replace of your statement of why that mistake was made and why a correction was needed. Again, abbreviations are okay. Your company will give you a set of abbreviations if they allow it. That information will very often be kept in the SOP or the standard operating procedure. So you've got a reference kind of thing to go to if ever needed. And original OG people correct their own errors. You should not be reviewing documentation for someone else and then going in and crossing out their data and writing in your initials and what the true thing is supposed to be. That is a data integrity violation. That is a problem. So the original person, if they made a mistake, will have to acknowledge the mistake. The original person logs the mistake, identifies it, and puts the correct thing in. No one else does it for them, or they shouldn't be. And if that is done on a completely different day, even the day after, a week after, you're going to have more justification. And that could be something as simple as it's on the receipt printer. I mean, it tells you right there the date and the time. So it's legit. I mean, I've got documentation to prove it and to back it up. Those are easy things to take care of. But if you're making a correction like a week later, oh, absolutely not. You're going to have a really good justification of why this stuff is happening, because that's an issue that we got to take care of. And that's a red flag for an auditor or some type of an inspector that is coming and looking at all of our documentation. You do not do that. So in the next video, we're picking up with footnotes. We've got just a couple of slides that are left for section 1.7. Then we'll be finished. And I think that we'll be finished with the first half of the lecture module. And that's really going to correspond to probably the first assignment that's lecture related in the shell of lecture material. So 2 slides left, and then go study your notes. Be prepared for that online quiz/test. And it might actually be online. I might require you to do it in person.